Let's look at the systems perspective on innovation for transforming food systems, and then look at the typology of the great food puzzle. So here is the systems perspective. Creating the kind of changes necessary to transform food systems requires having the foresight to seek out and address root causes of the problems we want to reverse. That means looking past the superficial indicators of problems such as greenhouse gas emissions and identifying deeper aspects of the system where change is needed. For example, change in how people value the For example, a change in how people value the natural world is as a critical part of their lives, and food systems can help shift the agendas for addressing climate change, whereas changes in the tools we use, such as specific kinds of seeds, may only contribute to the existing practices. So this is also talked about as decarbonizing the whole system instead of trying to reduce emissions and so on. So in terms of systems, you typically think about parameters, and the most important thing about systems is there are feedbacks like the ice albedo feedback in the earth system, or how your body responds when you feel thirsty, or organizational aspects and intent. So you must change something to affect something. So tools, taxes and incentives are the parameters that affect crop productivity and energy efficiencies. If you work on network standards and flexibility, then feedbacks affect trends over space and time. Policies, regulations and trade agreements are organizational perspective of the system, and they can affect equity and resilience. Norms, values and ways of thinking are intentional innovations, and they can affect agendas, ethics and identity. Does it help you with anything? It's a bit philosophical, but you get the idea. So let's go ahead and look at the great food puzzle typology. Typologies can be helpful for reducing complexity to a level where we can work with it and learn from it rather than being overwhelmed by it. For example, for their recent report on food and health transitions, the World Economic Forum adopted a typology that classifies national food systems based on their respective level of industrialization and consolidation. Other organizations have proposed alternative typologies and indices, such as the Economist's Global Food Security Index and Yale University's Environmental Performance Index. So indices are not unique, but hopefully the overall goal that they are trying to help are still the same. None of these on their own offer a satisfactory blend of local, social and environmental factors that are likely to shape nature-positive food systems transformations. In solving the great food puzzle, WWF proposed a new food systems typology that blends social, health and environmental variables that we looked at. The goal, or we will look at here, the goal is to highlight key features of national food systems that should be considered so that the highest impact transformation levers referred to in section 1 can be used to inform policy. With this study, we add the innovation layer so that innovations can be paired with transformation levers to amplify and accelerate national level food system transformation towards healthy diets from sustainable food systems. Healthy diets from sustainable food systems. Catchy slogans are always important, but having details such as these are critical to make them reality, right? So what is table 2? 6 variables that may have disproportionate impact on a country's ability to achieve climate and biodiversity goals, and that can shape the success and impact of innovations. So you need production system and innovation considerations. So here the level of industrialization and consolidation of a country's food production system, for example the relative prevalence of large and small farms, can have a large influence on the scale of land conversion and environmental impacts. Okay, so that's production system number 1. Innovation considerations, of course, fully industrialized production systems can be extremely resistant to change, making them difficult to meaningfully change without disruption, either from innovations or external shocks, which can create niche space for new directions to emerge. Comparatively, countries with less industrialized food systems may have opportunities to set a new development path for healthy and sustainable food systems. So when you don't have a lot of locked-in infrastructure investments, then it may be easier to change. Secondly, food security is as a second criteria. Food security describes the extent to which all people in a nation have sufficient access to safe, nutritious, and culturally preferred foods. Innovation considerations here: the more food insecure people are, the less likely technological innovations such as alternative meats will have a path-breaking impact. So the more food secure people are, the more opportunity the more food security people the more food secure people are, the more opportunity they may have to experiment with creative solutions that reduce the environmental impacts of food systems. So if they are just struggling for day-to-day food, meal to meal, and you tell them you have to do something to change your ways to protect the environment, they will just look at you as if you are stupid. But if they are food secure and they are not worried about getting the next meal or next few days meal or next year's meal, then they may be open to new ideas on reducing their impact, right? Dietary patterns, consumption patterns within a country are a good indicator of the level of environmental impact. Innovation considerations: nations that have high consumption levels of animal source or ultra-processed foods may benefit from technological and consumer innovations that shift consumption. Is that possible? Well, depends, right? Fourth one, potential for self-sufficiency. Whether a nation has access to sufficient arable land to produce sufficient food to support healthy and sustainable diets for its entire population speaks directly to pressures on land conversion in that nation and elsewhere. China and India are often compared to say that even though China is 3 times bigger, it has less arable land than India, and that obviously matters in terms of what land use approaches are taken and land conversion approaches are taken, and other ways of maybe converting degraded land into productive lands for food production. Innovation considerations here: nations with sufficient arable land to feed their populace sustainably can focus on innovations that accelerate the adoption of nature-positive production practices such as agroecology. Those without sufficient land may instead need to focus on high-tech production solutions or trade levers that incentivize healthy food imports. Biodiversity hotspots: these are regions characterized, you know what they are. They are important because they contain high level of biodiversity richness and endemic species, and innovations here need to worry about continued deforestation and conversion of wildlands as a primary threat to biodiversity hotspots. And agricultural efficiencies have to be part of it, because if you keep converting for agriculture, then biodiversity takes a back seat. Food production and food security, or even food export for income, can become dominant consideration as opposed to conserving groundwater or biodiversity and so on. So, sixth one, irrecoverable carbon. There are some natural spaces that we cannot afford to lose due to their irreparable carbon reserves. Irrecoverable carbon is irrecoverable carbon is ecosystem carbon that, if lost, could not be covered by mid-century, by when we need to reach net zero emissions. Well, a lot of wetlands and so on are lost to development because the policies are not there to protect them, and they are irrecoverable carbon sinks. Innovation considerations: continued deforestation and conversion of wild lands is a primary threat to irrecoverable carbon. Financial innovations such as carbon prices and credits that allow for true cost accounting can help disincentivize further conversion. These can also fund other protections, for example, indigenous guardianship and land reform. So you get a sense that there is a way to think about these in a systematic way, systems perspective way, to see what innovations are needed for what type of food system. We went from type 1 to type 6, but these are not unique, but the approaches will be pretty much the same. They all map onto the same thing. Let's read now quickly one more innovation implementation. Plant-based and cultured meat replacements. Good looking veggie burger here. US and worldwide food system type 5 are doing this. So these are consumer and technological innovations that sustain people's willing or people's desire to eat meat, let's say, or meat like, veggie burger is supposed to taste like a burger. What's put in it? Well, you have to figure that out. These levers here are develop alternative proteins, and impacts are incremental and smaller changes. What other innovations could amplify the impact? When combined with disruptive financial and policy innovations, such as consumer tax on animal source foods or ultra-processed foods, this could lead to path-breaking impacts that disincentivize overconsumption of animal source foods and would reduce land use for agriculture. In addition, when combined with policy innovations to make healthy foods more available and affordable, this could lead to diversifying impacts by opening new markets for healthy food consumption. When that got cut off, my system crashed. I didn't want to just leave it hanging there, so came back, and we'll just say that we'll continue this discussion. Definitely should be able to wrap up in the next podcast. We'll just look briefly at the innovation pitfalls. We already looked at this in terms of plant-based cultured meat replacements. One thing I worry about these plant-based cultured meats is the big factor there is to try to make them taste like meat, and apparently the taste of the meat comes from those fatty acids. So what are you adding to these plant-based meats to make them taste like meat? That's one question. Is it healthy? Secondly, if you are giving people the option of tasting things that are still tasting like meat, are you really getting them off meat, or you're just going to make them say someday, oh, I'm tired of this fake meat, I'm just going to go back to the real meat, right? So these are behavioral changes that can be tricky in terms of how you try to get people to reduce their impact. We all know that producing meat is very heavy in terms of environmental impacts, and we also know that some people love meats because they are grown up with it, or they acquired a taste along the way. Sometimes they are culturally big part of their cultural diet preferences, and so on and so forth. So I'll come back and close out this discussion. Okay.